Okay, let's get started. Does anybody, out of all six of you, anybody have any questions about the end of Goblet of Fire? Or anything you want to talk about for the end of Goblet of Fire? If there's not, then we'll go on to Order of the Phoenix. But if there is, believe me, I would love to see some things about Goblet of Fire, but most of it was probably covered in that one video that covered the last of it, if I remember correctly. I am, however, in Order of the Phoenix, going to back up a little bit into some of what was covered in that one, the second lecture that I sent, and this is going to be brief, and then we're going to get on to just about where that one ended. And this is in chapter 2, A Peck of Owls. So, Harry rescues Dudley. He saves Dudley from a Dementor. They arrive back home. Dudley's, vomiting, etc. The Dursleys are wondering what in the hell is going on. And when he gets there, they get a letter from Mafalda Hopkirk. They get a note from Arthur Weasley about Dumbledore's on it. Stay there, don't leave, etc. And on page 31, because the Dursleys have seen the letter and Harry's told them about, his uncle and such, his godfather and such, Harry mentions what he saved Dudley from. Dementors. And he has to say slowly and clearly. He very carefully dementors. And I think in that one of those lectures, it wasn't one this semester that I did live because of my issues going on. In the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is where we get introduced to Dementors, what do we find out about them? What do they cause? Put it this way, first of all. They make you depressed, okay? Rowling has said in interviews, Dementors are her manifestation, let's say, in the novels, of the depression she fought in her 20s. Largely caused by the death of her mom. She was only 25 when her mom died. Mom died of cancer. Her mom was only 45, okay? And so she creates this physical manifestation for Dementors, things that suck all hope, life, cheer, joy, happy memories, etc. out of you. So Harry goes on and talks about Dementors. Vernon, bottom of page 31. And what the ready hell are Dementors? And Aunt Petunia says, they guard the wizard prison Azkaban. Okay? Very short sentence, very simple sentence, and yet it is just pregnant with meaning. Because this tells us, what about Petunia? Anybody? Jacob?
Well, she's more aware of the wizard world that she wants to be, or that she lets on.
Yeah, I think both that she wants to be and that she lets on. What was her last contact? Let me put it this way. With the quote-unquote wizarding world from what we know so far.
It's like the letter that Dumbledore left for Harry, or with Harry.
The letter Dumbledore left with Harry, and before that, she's going to tell us kind of here, and we heard it a little bit in the first book. When her sister went off to Hogwarts, which was however many years ago now, we don't know exactly. Harry is now 5th book, 15. Okay? At least 15 plus years ago. Okay? And she remembers Azkaban. Somehow, she's heard about it. She somehow knows about Dementors, which must mean she had a conversation at some point with her sister about Azkaban and about Dementors. Harry, how do you know that? Aunt Petunia, 32. This is where we get the rest of the story, so to speak. I heard that awful boy lying about her. I heard that awful boy telling her about them years ago. Okay? I don't want to give anything away, but who do we assume that awful boy is? James. If you mean my mom and dad, why don't you use their names? Rowling is being intentionally coy here. Harry was stunned. Except for one outburst years ago, in the course of which Aunt Petunia had screamed that Harry's mother had been a freak, he had never heard her mention her sister. He was astounded that she had remembered the scrap of information about the magical world for so long when she usually put all her energies into pretending it didn't exist. Okay? They keep talking. More letters come in. Harry's upset because all these letters are coming in and nobody praises him. Well, it's all just wait for Dumbledore, etc. Page 37. And this is the part I wanted to get to. The rest of that's kind of lead up. 36 and 37. So they're talking about why Harry's with them. Harry says, when Vernon asks, what were these what's it doing here? Harry says, he must have sent them, top of 37. Who? Who must have sent them? Lord Voldemort. He registered dimly how strange it was that the Dursleys, who flinched, winced, and squawked if they heard words like wizard, magic, etc., don't react at all. He goes, hold on, I know that name. He's the one who murdered my parents. Yeah. What should go into Vernon's mind automatically at this point? So he murdered your parents now 16 years ago, and he sends these things to our little neck of the woods, so to speak. He must be after you again. Gone, you know. Harry, when Vernon says, but he's gone. He's back. This is the passage. It felt very strange to be standing here in Aunt Petunia's surgically clean kitchen. What does surgically clean imply? What's the single word that describes that? Sterile. If it's sterile, it means what? There's nothing alive in there. And in one sense, the Dursleys aren't alive. Yes, they're living, breathing, etc. What about emotionally? What about, quote unquote, spiritually? There's not much there. They are almost, okay? I'm not equating this. This is figurative language. It's almost like Dementors have sucked their souls out. Why do they live? Just for more stuff. Okay? How much love do we see in that house? Even between Vernon and Petunia and Dudley? Not really. The arrival of the into Aunt Petunia's surgically clean kitchen, beside the top of the range fridge, so most expensive one you could get, and the widescreen television in her kitchen, and talking calmly of Lord Voldemort to Uncle Vernon. The arrival of the Dementors in Little Winging seemed to have caused a breach in the great invisible wall that divided the relentlessly non-magical world of Privet Drive in the world beyond. What does the world beyond usually mean? The afterlife. What comes next? Is the magical world the world beyond? No, it's not. It's what? It's this world. It's just part that we, to use Star Trek language, that we are slightly out of phase with. They're like 1 second ahead, therefore we cannot see them. Okay? Notice, the great invisible wall that divided. is this wall really?
It's in Harry's mind.
Exactly. This is a wall in Harry's mind. He has divided the two worlds. Why do they have a ministry of magic? To keep the muggle world from knowing about the wizarding world. In other words, the ministry of magic knows full well that stuff that happens in the wizarding experience can have ramifications in the muggle world. Harry's thinking goes on. Harry's two lives had somehow become fused. And everything had been turned upside down. Okay, I apologize right now for beating the Christianity horse dead. This is an element of that. Harry's two lives, magical world or the world beyond, and this world, the physical world. That echoes somebody else. That echoes Christ. Why? Traditional Christianity, Jesus isn't just a man, is he? He's fully man, fully God. Two natures, one person. Harry, two natures, wizard, human, one person. I'm not stretching here. I'm not grasping at straws, because we're going to hear no one less than Lucius Malfoy call Harry something in just a few moments. So his two lives, what? They're now one, and everything had been turned upside down. Why? Because what does this now mean for Harry here in Privet Drive when he has to go home every summer, you know? It used to be that thinking of Hogwarts and everything was like thinking vacation, the real life away from this. Now, they're joined together. The Dursleys were asking for details about the magical world. And Mrs. Figg, who we got verbally introduced to in book 1, okay, knew Albus Dumbledore. She was the woman who was supposed to babysit him on Dudley's birthday, but who broke her leg, okay? Dementors were soaring around Little Winging, and he might never get back to Hogwarts. Why? There's got to be a trial. He thought he might never get back to Hogwarts when? After book 2. You know, Dudley drops the porridge or drops the pudding, and all hell breaks loose, you know, in terms of the Ministry of Magic. And then book 3, he blows up Aunt Marge. Petunia. So, while after Harry says he's back, the narrative takes us into Harry's mind, and Petunia, back. Why does she whisper it? She is scared as hell. She knows what it means. She's looking at Harry, and we're told, and all of a sudden, for the very first time in Harry's life, we're told, Harry fully appreciated that Aunt Petunia was his mother's sister. It's like the entire 13 years, take that back, 14 years now, he's been living with them. He's never thought about Aunt Petunia as sister to my mother. That's why she's the aunt part. Because what does that mean for him? He could not have said why this hit him so very powerfully at this moment. All he knew was that he was not the only person in the room who had an inkling of what Lord Voldemort being back might mean. Go back to what Sirius tells them in the cave at Hogsmeade. Okay, when Ron says, come on, try us. Everybody says we're good. You go, okay. Imagine Voldemort is back in power. Here's what it was like before. Harry's putting, I think, those words by Sirius to play here. Petunia must have heard from her sister about some of what was going on. And bear in mind, Muggles are going missing too. Aunt Petunia had never in her life looked at him like that before. Her large, pale eyes, so unlike her sister's, were not narrowed in dislike or anger, they were wide and fearful. The furious pretense that Aunt Petunia had maintained all Harry's life. What does pretense mean? Pretending, an act, a game. That there was no magic and no world other than the world she inhabited. That's the pretense. Seemed to have fallen away. In other words, her make-believe world blew up. And she's back in the real world that has always existed. But the Dursleys did what? Very first paragraph, very first book. They didn't hold to nonsense and anything strange or mysterious. So they tried to create this fiction. Gone. Harry, yeah, he came back a month ago. I saw him. Okay? So now when Vernon says, then you're out of here, he's like, I can't go. All right? They get a howler. A voice says, remember my last Petunia? What does that mean? Probably, it's never specifically said. It probably means, remember the letter I left with Harry. That explained Dumbledore told McGonagall in that first book everything. Okay? Jump ahead. So the advance guard comes. They take Harry to number 12, Grimmauld Place. Look how that word is spelled. Grimmauld or Grim Old Place. The A-U-L-D, that's Scottish for just old. Okay? Why is it a grim old place? Whose home is it? It's Sirius's. It's the black ancestral home. And we're going to find out Sirius's family was seriously twisted. They were bad. Okay? But we're going to skip everything else about there, seeing his mother and such. And go to, wait, I had it marked. That's not it. Go to page 154. Third page in The Woes of Mrs. Weasley. So Harry has the hearing. What kind of hearing is this? And what does he realize when Mr. Weasley kind of opens the door so Harry can go on in? Notice Arthur doesn't come in with him. Harry has no quote-unquote legal representation when he walks into that courtroom. It's the room he saw in Dumbledore's pensive. And there's the chair in the middle of the room that he saw Karkaroff sitting on, and he saw Ludo Bagman sitting in, and he saw Barty Crouch Jr. sitting in, and he's like, oh crap. Okay? Dumbledore comes in, saves the day, essentially. Doesn't spend any time with Harry, which Harry doesn't understand. Other than Dumbledore, what else gets Harry off in that scene? What helps procure his freedom? I mean, Dumbledore's the main part because he uses logic against Cornelius Fudge. But what does Harry do? What does he say to Susan Bones, who's one of the judges?
She's impressed that he can produce a corporeal Patronus.
Wait, you did this first in your third year? He's like, yeah, I've been doing it since then. Go away. And she's like, wow. What does Fudge say? It's not about the level of the magic that he can do. But it is. Because again, many can't. He gets released. Harry leaves. He finds Mr. Weasley right outside. And they run into Cornelius Fudge. And whom? Lucius Malfoy. Top of 154. Well, well, well. Patronus Potter. Why does he call Harry Patronus Potter? Ostensibly, because of what was discussed in the trial. Fudge said he got off because of being able to produce a Patronus, and Dumbledore's, interference. Why else does he call him that? What does the Patronus do? What did it do to the Dementors, both here and in book 3? Drives them away. Did Harry use the Patronus in this book for himself? He was protecting, delivering, guarding, saving Dudley. Patronus Potter. Catholic Church, you get baptized, confirmed, and such. You have a patron saint, Saint Potter. Okay? It's going to get used again, this idea. So, same chapter, a little bit later, they throw a party for Harry because he, gets acquitted. 173 and following. Harry's feeling pretty good, but, he's still a little down because he doesn't understand why he wasn't made prefect. Why in the world would Dumbledore give Ron, that, etc.? And there's other stuff going on inside Harry's mind. So Moody decides he's going to try and cheer him up. And what does he do? He pulls out a photograph of the old Order of the Phoenix, 173 and following. Harry's holding it. He sees a crowd of people. Again, not like our photographs, because these people move around and stuff. And he says, there's me. Notice, without the chunk of his nose missing. There's Dumbledore, Daedalus Diggle, Marlene McKinnon. She was killed 2 weeks after this was taken. The first of the original Order of the Phoenix named as being dead. They got her whole family. So it's Marlene McKinnon plus, we don't know how many, but at least her. That's Frank and Alice Longbottom, who Harry has not seen before. Poor devils. Better dead than what happened to them. Emmeline Vance, you've met her. There's Lupin. Benji Fenwick, copped it too. Another one dead. We only ever found bits of him. He moves others aside. Edgar Bones, brother of Amelia Bones. They got him and his family too. Great wizard. Sturgis Podmore, we're going to meet him. Caradoc Dearborn, or have met him, sorry. Caradoc Dearborn, there's Hagrid. Caradoc Dearborn vanished 6 months after this. Never even found his body. Aphias Doge, who Harry has met. Gideon Pruitt, took 5 Death Eaters to kill him. And his brother Fabian. They fought like heroes. There's Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth. Strange bloke. Practicing weird spells on sheep and stuff. Dorcas Meadows, Voldemort killed her personally, which probably indicates there is something very unique about her that he did this personally. What else? There's Sirius. There's his mom and dad. And Wormtail. Okay? There are 22 people named here. Of those 22, not including the family, 9 of them are dead. 2 of them are incapacitated, never to be able to do anything again. In other words, 50%. Harry goes immediately from here upstairs. He sees Mrs. Weasley looking into the drawing room, and she's full of tears, and she's trying to do the ridiculous charm because there's a boggart up there, and what do boggarts do? They show you your worst fear. And what do we see? Page 175. Harry goes into the room and he sees Ron dead. Wait, Ron's downstairs and Mrs. Weasley. Ridiculous. And Ron's body changes. Now it's Bill, spread-eagled. Why spread-eagled? That's telling us the manner of death. Everyone who dies as a result of the Avada Kedavra ends up body on the ground like this, arms out, legs spread, eyes wide open, with a look of utter fear on their faces. All except one person. Okay? That will happen later. Ridiculous. Mr. Weasley. Ridiculous. Fred and George. Ridiculous. Percy. Harry. She hasn't named Ginny yet. What has she just done? She's gone almost through her entire family. What is this telling us about Molly Weasley? Does she have reason to fear all of her family being dead? How many of them are in the Order of the Phoenix? Does it matter? How do terrorists generally work? If I can't kill Jacob, because he's bigger than I am, what can I do? I'm going to threaten his family. Okay. Lupin comes up. Mad Eye comes up. She begs him, don't tell Arthur. Why? She doesn't want Arthur to think she's weak. She doesn't want Arthur to know these are her greatest fears. 177. Harry, I'm so sorry. What must you think of me? Not even able to get rid of a boggart. Don't be stupid. I'm just so worried. It'll be a miracle if we all come through this. And Percy not talking to us. Is Percy simply not talking to them? Percy's done what? Has he gone over to the dark side? No, he hasn't joined Voldemort. He's gone over to the gray side because the Ministry of Magic is doing what? Actively, intentionally by this point. What did Ron and Hermione have to tell Harry? Because Harry's wanting to know, how come I haven't heard from anybody? How come Dumbledore hasn't spoken to me? And they're like, we don't really know about that last question, but Dumbledore gave orders. Keep everything from Harry. Lupin, Molly, that's enough. This isn't like last time. The Order are better prepared. In other words, most of these people died. Why? Because we were unprepared. Why were they unprepared? What? Possibly. The implication of, a possible implication, of the order of the names given in the photograph is that these are the order of deaths. Who are the last ones? James and Lily. In other words, all these others died before James and Lily did. Okay? What, as far as we know, did they not have last time? Let me back up. At the end of Goblet of Fire, what does Snape go off to do?
Rejoin Voldemort.
Remember? Dumbledore says, are you ready? And he's like, yes. He is the one that Voldemort says, one, I think, has left us, not left us forever, he will be killed. That's talking about Karkaroff. One has gone to the other side. That's talking about Snape. And what is Snape? Why would he make that assumption? Because Snape's been working with Dumbledore all this time. So Snape's going to go back. He's going to become a spy. That's why they are better off. Okay? we've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. Do we know what Voldemort's up to? Not necessarily. Haven't even talked about Harry's dreams, you know. Molly, come on. It's about time you got used to hearing it. Hearing what? Voldemort's name. In other words, you're in the order. Time to face up to it. Don't worry about Sirius. Don't worry about Percy, Sirius says. He'll come round. Okay? And as for who's looking after Ron and Ginny, if you and Arthur died, Lupin says, what do you think we do? Let them starve? Okay, do you really think that helps Molly a lot? Because what does that mean? Who's going to be looking after Ron and Ginny? A werewolf? And do you think the Weasleys, for example, are 100% trusting of Sirius now? I mean, for 12 years, he was known as what? Mass murderer. Do you just simply forget that in your mind? So, go on from there. Chapter 10, we meet Luna. Okay? And they're on the train. What characterizes Luna? Well, look at her name. What's that come from? Or what's it related to? Lunar, lunatic. A person who's a lunatic, a person who suffers from lunacy, this goes back to alchemy, goes back to astrology. They're under the influence of the moon. Okay? What characterizes, she's crazy. Or very odd, let me put it that way. She's idiosyncratic. She marches to the tune of her own drummer. How do we know? Because all the weird things she believes in. Her father's no better. All right? His name, we're going to find out later, is Xenophilius, Lovegood. Remember, the majority of names in Rowling have symbolic meaning behind them. Lovegood. When you get that kind of combination, love the good. This goes back to Plato and Socrates. The whole purpose of life, according to Plato, Socrates, and even Aristotle, is to love the good, meaning to seek out, follow the virtues. Become virtuous yourself. Why? Because the more virtuous become, the closer to the greatest good you reach. And the greatest good, the summum bonum in Latin, was God. That's why Socrates was killed. Why he had to drink the hemlock. He was teaching the youth of Athens to seek out the highest good, to attain, to discover, to find, to know a monotheistic God. Not all the little petty Zeus in here and all those, idiots, essentially. Up here, right? Their last name is tied into all of that meaning. So, we read about in her father's magazine, The Quibbler, that he's editor of. Stuff about, corruption in the Quidditch League, page 190, how the Tornadoes, that's the name of a team, are taking control, secrets of the ancient runes revealed, Sirius Black villain or victim, etc. What kind of publication is The Quibbler? Give a modern American version. National Enquirer, The Star, kind of things you're at a checkout counter at Kroger or Publix or something, and, Elvis found on Mars, kind of a thing. Okay. If you get on Drudge Report, usually the last few entries, like this thing that came out a week or two ago, about this massive complex under the Great Pyramids. These supposed archaeologists talking about these three giant structures that are 2 kilometers long that may be magnetic storage devices, batteries. Utter nonsense, okay? And yet people are taking them totally seriously. Well, Luna's going to figure prominently in this book. So we get introduced to her now, and then we will see her develop. And one of the things that Rowling will do is to suggest or to show, okay, so Luna has some ideas that are out there, but she's not totally crazy. Luna also has some qualities about her that other people should adopt. Okay? Sorting Hat's new song, chapter 11. So they get into school. Harry sees Dolores Jane Umbridge. Dolores, by the way, means sad, sorrowful. Umbridge, it's spelled differently than the modern English word U-M-B-R-A-G-E, which we only use in the context of I take umbrage at that, which means I get angry at what you've just said. It makes me upset. So she's sadly angry. Whatever. Look at the song, 204, 206. So this is the third time we've heard a song. And in the second time we heard it, Ron says, it changes every year. In times of old, when I was new and Hogwarts barely started, the founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. Hold on just 1 second. We'll call my grade. Wow, I'm dizzy today. Thought never to be parted. United by a common goal, they had the selfsame yearning to make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. Okay? Sounds good up to this point. Together we will build and teach. Let me pause for a moment. Look at terms in the song that allude to either of these, unity or disunity, harmony or discord. Notice, the founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. Parted, disunity, discord. United, So, they found the school to pass along their learning. Together we will build and teach, the 4 good friends decided, and never did they dream that they might someday be divided. For were there such friends anywhere as Slytherin and Gryffindor? Books 1 through 4 build this notion that Slytherins and Gryffindors are what? They're total opposites. Okay? Unless it was the second pair, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. So how could it have gone so wrong? Notice what the Sorting Hat is telling us. And it's telling us this when. When, I don't mean it's the beginning of the school year. I mean when, tense. It's telling us this now. How? The thing animating the Sorting Hat, I think, I could be wrong, is similar to, it's not the same. It's similar to Harry and Voldemort are dueling. Harry forces those little balls of light back into Voldemort's wand. First of all, what does that tell us? Who's more powerful? Harry is. Voldemort knows not to let those balls of light touch his wand. He's trying to push him towards Harry's, and he almost gets it. Okay? Once the balls of light go into Voldemort's wand, what starts to happen? Hand comes out, Cedric Diggory comes out, Frank Bryce comes out, Bertha Jorkins comes out. What? Harry's mother comes out, and she says, hold on, Harry, wait for your father. Why? What does she essentially say? Your father will make it all better. Common statement by parents to children. Okay? Does his father make it all better? No. And while Harry and Voldemort are kind of doing this, and while these things are all coming out, these, to use Dumbledore's term, these echoes are telling Harry what? They're telling him what to do right now, real time. What do echoes do? They don't do that. And Harry's father tells Harry, one, what the hell is going on? And two, what will happen when they break that chain? Okay? And he says, we'll give you some time. What does Cedric then say? Take my body. So if you can point to a piece of meat on the ground and say, take my body, what's saying, take my body? That is not an echo, folks. That's what? That's a soul. I think what we see come out of that wand, it's exactly the same thing Harry sees. Well, different ones. When he looks in the mirror. He's seeing his parents' souls and his ancestors. Bear in mind, the mirror shows you what? What you most desire. Does Harry want his soul to be with his parents? Well, probably yes, in one sense he does. Maybe not today or not tomorrow, but in the future. So, is this part of Godric Gryffindor's soul that he put in here? Well, the song says, the earlier one, he whipped his hat off his head and they put some of their brains in. I think it's part of this consciousness idea. So, how could it have gone so wrong? What's the Sorting Hat telling us? What does Harry think of Hogwarts? Oh man, it's the greatest thing. My three eldest kids, because my youngest son had to be different, too much like me. My three eldest kids, when they all turned 11, they got letters from Hogwarts because I bought parchment paper and did the calligraphy and the whole 9 yards. And my daughter, my eldest daughter, she thought it was real. I mean, she knew it wasn't, but she thought it was. I was like, yeah. The Sorting Hat is telling us Hogwarts is broken. Not just because Dolores Jane Umbridge is there. That's unimportant. I mean, it does allude to her. It is saying, Hogwarts is not how it's supposed to be. So, how did it get this way? How could such friendships fail? Why, I was there and so can tell the whole sad, sorry tale. The whole. The entire. What does that mean? Going back to the beginning. The roots of its destruction were sown in its founding, or were the seed of its destruction was put in the ground in its founding. They screwed up, in other words, from the beginning. Why? Said Slytherin, we'll teach just those whose ancestry is purest. We, Slytherins, will teach who? Just those whose ancestry is purest. What does just mean? He is just an enemy, Frodo says about Gollum, and therefore deserving of death. That's all he is. He's nothing else beyond that. We'll teach only those who are purebloods, Slytherin says. Said Ravenclaw, we'll teach those whose intelligence is surest. Does Ravenclaw qualify those? Well, by saying the smartest, but she doesn't say just those. Says Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Then how the hell did Neville get into Gryffindor? The guy could barely even hold his wand right. How did his family find out he was actually magical? His uncle Willie, or whatever it was, literally dropped him on his head from a second floor roof, and he bounced. And it's like, oh, he's magical. We'll find that out later. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same. What does the lot mean?
The rest of them.
All of them.
Oh,
I'll teach all of them and treat them how?
equal.
Equal, 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 equal. In other words, Slytherin, the bet, nope. Ravenclaw, nope. Nope. No bravest, no bestest, I'll teach them all and treat them the same. These differences caused little strife when first they came to light. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted. Only those they wanted? Okay, who's speaking? Whose head is this? It's Gryffindor's. The bit of Godric Gryffindor that is in the hat is the one that speaks for the hat, I think. Okay? When we hear Slytherin, that's the bit of Slytherin that got put in there. When we hear Ravenclaw, that's Ravenclaw's voice, so to speak. But generally when the head speaks, it's Gryffindor's voice, I think. I don't have any proof. I just think that's the case. Okay? So when that is said, again, you go back to what the description about Hufflepuff, and what did Hufflepuff say? I'm going to teach them all. Not only those in which they might take only those they wanted. Because if it were Hufflepuff, they would all be what? All of them would be Hufflepuffs. For instance, Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning. What's great cunning? What does it mean to be cunning? You have to be smart to be cunning. That's a Ravenclaw quality. But what else is it? It's not just smarts. It's not just high IQ. It's smarts and high IQ for what purposes?
Getting ahead.
Getting ahead. We're going to be told, or we've been told already, ambition. But there's a slightly underhanded quality to it.
It's like sneaky.
Yes, sneaky. It's almost never good to be sneaky. It's like, ensuring that you're going to pass an exam by nefarious means, so to speak. Okay? So, just like him, great cunning and pureblood. Ravenclaw, we're told, only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and the boldest went to bravest, boldest, daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest. So, leave the world of Harry Potter for a moment and go back to your elementary or grade school, PE. Maybe you didn't have this. I had this. And you got to decide, divide into teams, your class. How does it, maybe everything was more egalitarian by the time you guys went to grade school. When I was a kid, what always happened Who's the last to be chosen?
Smallest.
The smallest, the weakest, the fattest, the slowest, the dumbest, the least popular, the most athletic, number one, usually the captains, etc. Okay? Who's an Hufflepuff?
The last to be chosen.
The dregs. Go back to Dobby, book 2. What does Dobby call himself and others like him? And why is he so concerned about saving Harry? We dregs of the magical world, he says. Okay? All the rest go to Hufflepuff. Notice, it's not like Hufflepuff says, I want to pick you because you're the best at being Hufflepuffian. Well, what characterizes Hufflepuff? Loyal, just, true, hard workers. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest and taught them all she knew. Thus the houses and their founders retained friendships firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. What time is it? So, you count. You have 1. What comes next? 2. What's a word that we use other than 2 to describe 2? A couple, right? So, a couple. 3, we don't have a word that describes 3-ness, but if a couple is 2, 3 might be what? Or say 3 to 4 becomes a few. It's a little bit more than a couple, but it's not a couple. Unless in the South, like all of my wife's family, they're all from South Georgia. They'll use couple to describe 3. It's like, no, that's a throuple. It's couples too. Where do you get after few? More than 5 is what? Several. We're told, book 3, the big dinner at the inn at the Dursleys' house, right? Harry has to keep everything in check. And what do the Dursleys do? How much wine do they drink? Several bottles. Among 3 adults. Several is more than 3. And that kind of implies they each put down 1. And then Vernon has the bright idea of uncorking a bottle of brandy. Okay? And, Aunt Marge is a little more there, Vernon, tipping the end up to fill, totally wasted at the end of that party when all the bad stuff happens. So, my point is, for several happy years, they worked in harmony. How old is Hogwarts?
About 1,000.
It's over 1,000 years old. That could mean within 10, 20 years, what? It falls apart. But then discord crept among us, feeding on our faults and fears. What is meant by faults?
Like
Shortcomings, errors. Okay? What is another meaning of the word fault? I'm from California. They're all over the place. Fault lines, cracks in the Earth's crust that lead to what? Earthquakes. But they're cracks. They're marks of division. Okay? Discord crept among us, feeding on these faults. I think it's both meanings. Okay? The houses that, like pillars for, did what? Had once held up our school. The houses, the idea is, the houses are the foundation of Hogwarts. Now turned upon each other and divided sought to rule. The speaker is saying each house said, I'm better than the others. They tried to rise up, and then the others fought back. Not literally, metaphorically fought back. And for a while it seemed the school must meet an early end. What with dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend, that is, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaws, or Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw fighting, Gryffindor and Slytherin fighting. And at last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out, he left us quite downhearted. This is simplistic, but I think it's one of Rowling's sheer strokes of genius. Common representation of a heart, right? And yet we know that the heart has what? 4 chambers. What happens if one of those 4 chambers stops working?
The rest stop working.
You go into cardiac arrest. You have a heart attack. The heart dies, and everything supported by the heart dies. So we're told one morning, what happens? Slytherin leaves. And we were left, he left us quite downhearted. Downhearted, metaphorically, the way it's usually used, means we're sad, we're depressed, we're not pumped up, but it also means he left us in cardiac arrest. Hogwarts is what? It is fatally flawed. And never since the founders 4 were whittled down to 3 have the houses been united as they once were meant to be. And now the sorting hat is here, and that is all you know. Oh, excuse me. Now the sorting hat is here, and you all know the score. The score meaning the song, and you know how things stand. Because that is what I'm for. But this year I'll go further. That is, I am here to sing the score. But this year, I'm going to do a little bit more. Listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to split you. What does condemned mean? Damned. Co, with, damned. I'm damned with what? Splitting you. The sorting hat has just said, I don't want to do this, but I am forced to. Why? Because that's what it is for. That's its raison d'etre. It is its reason for being. Condemned I am to split you. How? When first years arrive at Hogwarts, what are they before the sorting hat ceremony?
They're just Hogwarts students.
They're just Hogwarts students. They're all first years. And then what happens? They are split. How does the sorting ceremony work? How does the sorting hat work? The sorting hat looks inside the soul of each person, the mind of each person, etc., and does what? Well, let's use Harry as an example. Plenty of talent. Oh my, yes. What else? A thirst to prove himself. What else? Ambition. What else? Not a bad mind. What have we just been told? All 4 qualities. Harry has qualities of each of the 4 houses. Oh, I never even thought about that before. Damn, she's brilliant. Harry is Hogwarts in that sense. He's the embodiment of it. He has all of the qualities. It's like he's the only one that can do what? Make Hogwarts hole. Okay? I've been doing this. Once the 7th book came out and everything kind of made sense, every time I read this, it just more and more. Condemned I am to split you. Again, because what does the sorting hat do when it looks inside each student? People who go into Slytherin, they're more what than else? They're more ambitious. They're more cunning. That is, they might be 51% ambition and cunning, and they might be 49% Ravenclaw or 49% bold and daring. But the sorting hat does what when it looks at each person? You're a Ravenclaw. And it says that is the defining characteristic. How does it do that? I don't mean how because it's the brains and stuff. I think this goes back to a way of thinking that we started discussing with Chamber of Secrets. What does Hagrid tell Arthur about the Malfoys? Rotten to the core. In other words, it goes to blood, it goes to certain aspects of our being, and yet, what did we hear at the end of that book? It is our choices, Harry, far more than our abilities. Abilities are what? What's talent? Even in my prime, I would never run like Usain Bolt. I would never jump like Michael Jordan or throw a basketball, shoot a basket like Michael Jordan. Not even close. Why? That talent was not in me. I couldn't run like my brother. He was a sprinter. I was long distance. He could beat me he probably still could. He's older. Well, I don't have knees. Definitely could. What's the point? Those are things you're born with, like your blood. Your choices, that's how you respond to things. Those aren't things you're born with. Those are what you decide. Okay? The sorting hat is judging by what? What you're born with. It's judging by blood in that sense. So it splits you according to that. It says, you're this and not this. Still I worry that it's that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and again, another word for splitting, another word for disunity, another word for discord. Though I must quarter every year. Why? Because that incoming student class, they get divided into fourths. Some go to Gryffindor, some go to Slytherin, some go to Ravenclaw, some go to Hufflepuff. And it's implied. It's not actually stated anywhere. It's implied. It's an even division. An even number go to each of the 4 houses. We don't know how many that is. Okay? Quarter. Each student, therefore, is quartered. And by that I mean the sorting hat looks at each and sees qualities of all 4 houses in each, but determines on the basis of the preponderance of qualities which one they go into. And must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. What's the end? The song, the hat fears. We're not told. Or is it the end of Hogwarts? Know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows. What history? The history of Hogwarts? The history of the Wizarding World? For Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes. Umbridge. And we must unite inside her, or will crumble from within. I've told you, I've warned you, now let the sorting begin. How did Dumbledore end Goblet of Fire? End of the year feast, right? He praises Cedric. He praises Harry. And then he says what? He says, skipping all this stuff, crouch. end of the year feast. 721. Cedric was a person who exemplified many of the qualities that distinguished Hufflepuff House. He was a good and loyal friend, a hard worker, valued fair play. His death has affected you all, whether you knew him well or not. You have the right to know what happened. And he says Voldemort killed him. Ministry of Magic doesn't want you to hear this. So what has he just said? I'm giving you state secrets. All the ears, Talks about Dumbledore. Talks about Harry. Harry must be singled out. And then he says 723. He looks at Madame Maxime. He looks at Hagrid. He looks at Fleur. He looks at the other Beauxbaton students. He looks at Victor Crumb and the Durmstrangs at the Slytherin table. Every guest in this hall will be welcome back here at any time, should they wish to come. I say to you all, once again, in the light of Lord Voldemort's return, we are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided. And then the Sorting Hat tells us this song. Hogwarts is what? It's internally divided. It is internally at war. Lord Voldemort's gift for spreading discord and enmity is very great. We can fight it only by showing an equally strong bond of friendship and distrust. Differences of habit and language. Why? Because Beauxbatons speak French. Durmstrangians probably speak something like Bulgarian, because Victor Crumb flew for the Bulgarian team. Are nothing at all if our aims are identical. That is, if we have the same goals, the same purpose, and our hearts are open. Why open hearts? It is my belief, and I never have I hope so that I'm mistaken, we're all facing dark and difficult times. Some of you in this hall have already suffered greatly. Many of your families have been torn asunder. We're going to meet some of these students in this book whose families have been torn asunder. We haven't heard about them before. All right? Remember Cedric. Remember if the time should come when you have to make a choice between what is right and what is easy, remember what happened to a boy who is good and kind and brave because he strayed across the path of Lord Voldemort. Notice, you have to make a choice. When the time comes, you have to make a choice between what is right and what is easy. Remember Cedric. Why? What was the right choice Cedric made as opposed to the easy choice? What would the easy choice have been? Take the cup. What would still have happened to Cedric? He still would have died. He made the right choice by doing it with Harry. He still dies. What's Dumbledore telling his students? You got to be prepared to die, folks. The battle's coming. Why else does he bring Mad-Eye Moody back this year? Okay? The book ends the chapter, the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of what was alluded to at the end of, middle of book 1, Mars is bright tonight. This book's going to end. The Second War begins. The First War, kind of like Muggle World, First World War, Second World War. The First War ended when? When Harry got the scar. Did it end? No, it didn't. So, Ron, branched out a bit, hasn't it? Wow, that's quite a different Sorting Hat song. This is the beginning of the year feast. And what is the song telling them? Let me rephrase that. What is the song warning them? Things are about to get real. And what do they need to do? Hermione wonders if it's ever given warnings. Nearly Headless Nick says, yes, it has. And Harry wonders if it's saying we've got to make nice with the Slytherins. And that is kind of what it's saying. Okay? So let's go on from there. We've got 15 minutes left. We find out Dean Thomas's parents are muggles and such. We meet Professor Umbridge. And if I can find the page. Defense Against the Dark Arts, page 239. So, very briefly, we're now in the 5th book. Who have we had for Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers? We had Quirrell, failure, right? Lockhart, more of a failure. Lupin, pretty good. Moody, really good. I mean, let's admit, leave aside for the moment that he's Barty Crouch Jr., okay? In terms of teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, what did he teach Harry to do? Fight the Imperious Curse. He taught them to be what? Situationally aware. Harry probably became like a Leo, law enforcement officer, after that point. Anytime, goes out to eat, sits with his back against the wall and looks at the openings and exits. My brother-in-law's an ex-cop. Wherever he goes. He hasn't been a cop for 10 years. He's always looking at exits and entrances, okay? Harry's probably thinking along those lines. And then we get Umbridge. 2 of the first 4 were good. The other 2, not so much, okay? This is the first time we hear course objectives. Okay? I think there's a reason for that. Page 240. Part of me says I should close the door at this point. But it's going to be recorded anyways. Why does she give her course objectives? Let me back up. What is Umbridge's training to be a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher? What do we know of her background? Anything? Harry's seen her before. When?
At his hearing.
Sitting up there next to Cornelius Fudge. Okay? Course aims. Understanding the principles underlying defensive magic. So what is meant by the principles underlying defensive magic? That's what? Principles are what? They're theory. They're not what? They're not praxis. Praxis. Greek for practice. Doing. So, we're going to understand the theories behind defensive magic. Learn to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. That makes sense. Placing the use of defensive magic in a context for practical use. Makes sense. That's also theory. And number 2, learning to recognize situations. That's also theory. How many of you would be driving today? How many would you have a driver's license if all you learned about driving was the theory about how automobiles worked and never having gotten behind the wheel? It's a lot easier today with almost all cars being automatic. When I grew up, when I got my license, we had stick shift. Where I lived in California, Silicon Valley, I was really close to the eastern side of the Santa Cruz Mountains. So my dad, with all 5 of us kids, when we would go to get our license, he took us to the Los Gatos DMV. Los Gatos is in the hills. Los Gatos DMV instructors, whatever you call them, would always take you to park on a hill. Okay? So you had to know, if you were in a stick, you had to know how much to let out on the clutch and how much to push on the accelerator in order to keep that car from starting to slide. We would have to parallel park on a hill. Okay? And I'm not talking where you've got these big spaces. I mean, 8 to 10 foot. If I'd only ever done that up here, in theory, I would never have learned to drive. What's my point about all that? Theory is fine. It has nothing to do with reality. Okay? Why did I ask the question about her background? The course aims, the course objectives, I'll bet most of your courses you have on the syllabi course objectives. Okay? I never used to include those until maybe 10 years ago. And the only reason I started including them, where am I, is because of the unnamed ones in that building over there started putting pressure on faculty. You need to tell students what your course aims and objectives are. All of that comes out of departments of education. I'm not slamming, well, I am kind of. Departments of education, okay? They are usually the highest GPAs on campus. Yeah, I won't make any other comments. She's not qualified for this job. Why is she there? Because Cornelius Fudge put her there. So, what are they doing the first class session? Open your books and read. What is teaching? I should not go in, really should not go into this.
It's like imparting your knowledge to someone, to your students.
Imparting knowledge to students and, or, I mean, I'm definitely that school. And what else? Causing their minds to do what? To open up, to be receptive to other ideas, okay? Part of that is, for example, in here, I will take words and I will not just open them up, but I will explain them in ways you've probably not seen before in my other classes. I definitely do this. I look at etymologies, the history of how words begin and how they shape and change over time and such. Why? Not because I think all of you are stupid, but all of you are, in a very specific context, ignorant. That is not a pejorative term. That is not slamming anybody. What does it mean? It'd be like me going over to, got a friend who's in the chemistry building, sitting down, he's brilliant, genius level brilliant. It'd be like me sitting down in a chemistry class and trying to follow along. Totally ignorant when it comes to that. It just means not knowing. The purpose of teaching is to help one become knowing about a topic. What does that mean? It means kind of hands-on. Hands-on application in here means delving into the books, getting into the meat, the nitty-gritty. If you're in the aviation program, hopefully you're going to get your pilot's license only when? After you've done a hell of a lot of flying, okay? Or any other kind of like, if you're in concrete management, you better know about the strengths of concrete and how to mix it properly, all that stuff. How is she going to teach this class? From this point on, it's all going to be theory. Why? That's what departments of education do. It's all theory. What do they need? Why was Lupin good and why was Mad-Eye Moody, aka Barty Crouch Jr. good? Little second, pause that. Question. Not 19. Why in the world? Something that's bothered me. I think I know the answer, but like 10% think I know the answer. Why in the world does Barty Crouch Jr. teach Harry how to throw off the Imperius curse? is this like to give his master, a sporting, like turning Harry into human prey so that he can play with him like a cat with a mouse? Because what does Harry do before the duel? He's tortured. He won't say, I'm sorry, or whatever it is Voldemort wants him to say. I've got to teach you virtue. Anyways, totally off the topic. She's like Lockhart. She's like Quirrell. So, who interrupts the class reading? Let me get back to why I went off on the thing about teaching. Assigning students to simply read. That's not teaching. Nor would, my opinion, okay? Could be wrong, don't think I am, otherwise it wouldn't be my opinion. Nor would be asking one of you to come up here. That's not teaching. Why? Okay, that would be teaching what one of you might know, and maybe one of you's read these books as much as I have. Okay? But I've also got 45 years of life on this planet that informs that reading. What do I mean? Slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Hamlet calls them. I've been through the ringer, in other words. That informs this. My understanding of this is a lot different from a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old. So if I were to ask one of you to come up and say, teach this tomorrow, the next 10 chapters, the ideas that you would probably get, you might not have heard some of them, or you might not have thought of some of them, and in that sense you would be taught, but it wouldn't be taught what? How you're expecting. The students going to this class, what are they thinking? We're 50 years. They've only got, after this one, 2 more before they're out. And it's not like they have colleges and universities to learn magical education. This is what they get before they go out into the world. And she doesn't give them any practice. So, people start asking questions, because Hermione does. Harry says, she says, bottom of 243, in response to Dean Thomas, it is the view of the ministry that a theoretical knowledge will be more than sufficient to get you through your examination. In other words, what's the purpose of the class? To pass the test. And this is published in 2003. The United States, at least, didn't start to develop as fully this mentality until about 2000. I could be wrong here. It might have been around then. I was going to say around 2005, when George Bush and Ted Kennedy passed 4 words, no child left behind. Which all of you, my opinion, got totally screwed over with. Why? Because it made all of your grade school, middle school, junior high education experience aimed towards TCAP. All of it. It was not about learning stuff that would, 1, help you understand that out there, or 2, help you do better in that out there. It was all about the theory, okay? Which is why the students are asking all these questions. What question does Harry bring up? Or what problem does Harry bring up? What goods theory, 244, just above the middle of the page. What goods theory going to be in the real world? This is school, Mr. Potter, not the real world. That is the problem. So we're not supposed to be prepared for what's coming, for what's waiting out there? There's nothing waiting out there, Mr. Potter. Harry, oh yeah? Who do you imagine? Notice what she's doing. Harry, for what's raining out there, she goes back to, who do you imagine wants to attack children like yourselves? She goes from what to who? Why? She knows what she's doing. She knows how Harry's going to reply. Harry is like a computer, a calculator with buttons, and she's like, oh yeah, this big red one right here. This will get the response I want. Maybe Lord Voldemort? And he says the name that must not be named. 10 points. Why? He said a name. He said a word. I got raked over the coals a couple years ago because I said a word. Okay? Thought I was going to get fired. Why not be able to say the name? It's not spoken in polite society. And so she goes on and says, what? You've been told a certain dark wizard is back, blah, 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 blah. All of that is untrue. What has she just told them? Everything Dumbledore told them at the end of the previous year, all lies. What happened to Cedric Diggory was what? An unfortunate accident or a tragic mistake. What does that do for Cedric Diggory's memory? To say what happened was a tragic mistake. What does that say about him? He's a screw up. Harry's not only defending himself, Harry's defending Cedric by engaging in this argument. Okay, we will stop there. We've got 2 more days, and we'll probably actually do this in 2 more days because I'm going to skip a lot. This is, of all the novels, this is the one that could be, I think, cut by a 4th, easily, with good editing. So we'll skip about a 4th of it. Wake up.